Hey guys, while not the most popular class in the game by any means, Glaivier has definitely been one of the most popular classes in Lost Ark ever since it was released. Out of all of the 1600 plus item level players in Korea, 4.57% choose to play Glaivier, and within that 4.57%, a whopping 81.29% of those Glaivier players choose to play the Pinnacle class engraving. So why is it that so many people choose to play Glaivier? Additionally, why do so many of them choose to play Pinnacle? Well, today we're going to explore that by taking a look into the Glaivier class overall, and then taking a deep dive into the Pinnacle engraving. Ever since the birth of the class, Glaivier was always seen as a fairly versatile and flashy martial artist. With the ability to swap between two weapons, the glaive and the lance, the Glaivier definitely has a very unique playstyle that the other classes don't possess. And despite being a melee class, because of the sheer range of their weapons, Glaiviers actually have the luxury of being able to play both as a short and a long distance damage dealer, which is one of the features that make them extremely versatile. The Glaivier class operates off of a resource called their dual meter. Whenever you land an attack as a Glaivier, your dual meter goes up. Additionally, some of your skills have tripods that allow you to do more damage in exchange for using some of that dual meter as a resource. While for the most part, this meter doesn't need any sort of management because you're consistently attacking, it is used as a resource and is a bit more important when talking about the Pinnacle engraving. But before going into that, let's take a look at their weapons. As I mentioned before, the Glaivier has two weapons, the glaive and the lance. When using the glaive, you are in the flurry stance, which gives you access to all of your blue skills. In addition to being able to use some of those fancy dragon themed attacks, the flurry stance is where most of the Glaivier's mobility lies. On the other hand, when you swap over to the lance, you're in the focus stance, which gives you access to all of your red skills. These skills are typically much harder hitting, and is also what allows you to play more of that ranged playstyle. However, in exchange for this power and range, you give up the majority of your mobility skills, and you have a much shorter dash distance as well with your spacebar. But the one thing that prevents you from being a sitting target dummy while using your lance is your ability to parry. Glaivier is one of the few classes that is able to parry attacks, and as a result, boosts its survivability and flexibility tremendously. In addition to being able to parry, Glaivier's kit also offers two counter skills, a healthy amount of stagger skills, and a good variety of weak point skills as well. And to top this all off, Glaivier is the only class in the game that provides the damage on crit hit synergy that is extremely valuable and sought out for in every single raid. Additionally, this doesn't stack with Keen Blunt Weapon, so classes that have high crit damage can still benefit off of this. So as you can see, the Glaivier's kit is extremely loaded, and it's no surprise to see it as one of the most played classes in Lost Ark. So what about the Pinnacle engraving? Why is it played so much more compared to the Control engraving? Well, there are likely a few factors to this, with the biggest factor being simply damage output. Unfortunately, the Pinnacle engraving just outputs an exponentially larger amount of DPS compared to the Control engraving. As I mentioned previously, the red stance is where the majority of your damage comes from, and the Control engraving completely removes your ability to swap to that stance. While this is compensated a bit by increasing the damage of your blue skills when using the Control engraving, the increase in damage is just not enough to make up for your inability to swap to using your lance. Additionally, one of the main unique things about the Glaivier class is its ability to use both the lance and the glaive. So when you remove that factor, there's little to set it apart from the rest of the classes. Because of this, in my opinion, even if both Control and Pinnacle Glaivier were to do the same amount of damage, I feel like Pinnacle Glaivier would still be the more popular engraving regardless. Now, with that out of the way, let's take a deeper dive into the Pinnacle engraving. Remember earlier in the video when I talked about the dual meter being a very important part of the Pinnacle Glaivier? Well, this is where the dual meter comes in. When using the Pinnacle engraving, whenever you swap between weapons with at least one bar of your dual meter filled, you're granted a buff that provides you with a massive increase to your attack speed, movement speed, and damage for 15 seconds. This is the bread and butter of the Pinnacle Glaivier, and is the reason why Pinnacle Glaivier is so strong. Your goal is to swap between these stances to keep this buff up 100% of the time in order to maximize your damage output. While this sounds like a lot to manage, the Pinnacle Glaivier has a pretty set rotation which will provide you with basically max dual meter at all times. The overall gameplay for Pinnacle Glaivier looks like this. Start by gaining 1 bar of your dual meter in whatever stance you're currently in. Personally, I prefer starting with the flurry stance, that way I can quickly swap to the lance and start using those hard-hitting red skills. Once you swap weapons, you use your rotation for that stance, and you swap back to the other weapon when you're done with that. This cycle repeats itself over and over again until you're done with the raid. Of course, you can feel free to swap between stances in between to take advantage of the increased mobility of the flurry stance or the parry of the focus stance. But for the most part, you will be following a set rotation for each stance and swapping between them whenever you're done with your rotations. That sounds pretty simple, right? Well, that's because it really is that simple. The major thing you really need to worry about as a Pinnacle Glaivier is being able to land your attacks on the back, since you are a back attacking class, but the mobility of this class really allows you to stick to the back of any boss pretty effectively. There's a couple of small quirks to playing this class, but since this isn't really meant to be a guide of any sorts, I'll leave those smaller nuances out of this video. Overall, the Pinnacle Glaivier is an extremely versatile class that is able to dish out a ton of damage, provide a lot of utility to the raid, in addition to its exclusive and extremely powerful damage on crit hit synergy. It's no wonder why so many people play this class and so many people choose to play the Pinnacle Engraving. So yeah, that's about it guys. That is the Pinnacle Glaivier in a nutshell. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you a little bit more insight into why the Pinnacle Glaivier is so popular. So if you did enjoy it, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button, hit that sub button, and rang that bell for notifications, because I will be making more of these types of videos in the future for other classes. And as always, I stream every night on twitch.tv/misoxshiru starting at 10 p.m. PST. Additionally, I also multi-stream on YouTube, so you can catch me on both platforms. So hopefully, I'll see y'all on my stream, but if I don't, hopefully I'll see you guys all on the next video. Alright guys, peace out.